In this video, we are going to talk about what are called the Joule-Thomson coefficients. So consider an adiabatic piston with a chamber of gas at temperature T1 and a fixed pressure at P1, meaning that the pressure in this chamber here is not going to change. One end of which is a porous barrier, so that would be this right here, separating it from another chamber which has a temperature of T2 and a fixed pressure of P2. So over here, the pressure is also not going to change. And there is a frictionless piston right here. So as this piston on the left is pushing in, the gas moves through this porous barrier and enters into this piston here on the right. And so what will happen over time is we will start like this, where this piston is all the way up against the porous barrier. As we push this in, gas moves through. We start moving gas into this right chamber out of the left chamber. As that goes, we will end up with all of the gas in the right chamber. Since the gas must move from the left side chamber to the right side chamber, we must also have that during the process, the pressure P1 that's on the left side is greater than the pressure P2 on the right side. In the left side chamber, work is done on the gas, and so the work equal to the pressure times volume on the left side is greater than 0, while in the right side chamber, the work is done by the gas onto that chamber pushing to the right, and so the work on the right side, which is equal to the pressure times volume on the right side, is less than 0. We therefore have that the net amount of work, which is the work on the left plus the work on the right, is equal to P1V1 minus P2V2. Since this is adiabatic, we know that the Q is equal to 0. There is no heat exchange. Therefore, the internal energy is equal to the net amount of work done, meaning that the net amount of work is equal to the E of system 2, so that's the internal energy of system 2 minus the internal energy of system 1. If we substitute PV for W up here, we end up with P1V1 minus P2V2 equals the internal energy of system 2 minus the internal energy of system 1. If we rearrange this, we see that the internal energy of system 1 plus P1V1 equals internal energy of system 2 plus P2V2. But recall that the enthalpy is just defined as the internal energy plus the pressure times volume. So this tells us that the enthalpy of system 1 is equal to the enthalpy of system 2, meaning that for the gas undergoing this process, the change in enthalpy is equal to 0. This process is called isenthalpic since the enthalpy does not change. However, for a real gas, the change in temperature is not 0. In other words, the temperature still changes. This derivative, which can be measured in experiments like the one shown above with our two-piston system, is called the Joule-Thomson coefficient, which we use mu sub Jt right here. For an ideal gas, we'll see that the Joule-Thomson coefficient is equal to 0, but not for a real gas, where changes in pressure interconverts kinetic energy and potential energy due to interactions of the particles. So remember, with our ideal gas, we assume that there is no intermolecular force, but for real gases, we do have these intermolecular forces, and so we can have kinetic energy become potential energy and vice versa. Recall the cyclic rules for partial derivatives gives us this right here, so we can rearrange to get this right here, but since this in red is the constant pressure heat capacity, or C sub P, and this right here was just what we called up above the Joule-Thomson coefficient, we can then substitute those in like this, where we know that for an ideal gas, the numerator is 0, so the Joule-Thomson coefficient for an ideal gas is also 0. The Joule-Thomson coefficients for a real gas, like this nitrogen, at various pressures and low temperatures are as follows. So we can see here the stuff in blue is positive, stuff in red is negative. Where the Joule-Thomson coefficient is positive, the expansion of the gas, which is the same as a drop in temperature, causes the temperature to decrease, which means that the change in temperature here equal to this Joule-Thomson coefficient times the change in pressure would be negative. And so we can see that letting the gas expand from a high pressure into a low pressure in our original piston that we saw up above causes the temperature to decrease. So as we go from a high pressure to a low pressure, the temperature will actually go down. If you've ever sprayed something out of like a hairspray can or a spray paint can or something, you might feel that it becomes cold, and that is because pressure is going down and so temperature is going down. The temperatures at which the Joule-Thomson coefficient switches from positive to negative is called the inversion temperature. At a given pressure, there are two inversion temperatures. For instance, for nitrogen gas at 1 atmosphere pressure, we have that the Joule-Thomson coefficient is greater than 0 if we are below 621 Kelvin, but the lower inversion temperature for 1 atmosphere is actually lower than the boiling point of nitrogen. We can actually look at the Joule-Thomson curves right here. What we see in blue is the one for nitrogen, so we see that up here it's about 621, 621. Down here, it's less than 200. We can actually see this better on this one right here. We can see up here it's at the 621, then it goes down here, so it's actually a liquid above this inversion point right here. Liquid nitrogen and other liquefied gases is made using this principle in what is called the Hampson-Linde cycle, which goes through cycles of compressing, then cooling, then expanding the gas to let it go down to extremely cold temperatures. And actually quite a bit of refrigeration works this way, where we use this principle that expanding a gas causes it to cool down. But anyway, that was everything I wanted to talk about in this video. I hope you found that helpful, and I will see you in the next one.